From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. We start to lean in on the Houston Texans coming to town on Sunday. The Broncos, a short week following the loss to the Seattle Seahawks. But Ben, often said in the NFL, opportunities come in the very next week. If you have a loss, you have a chance to bounce back, get a win.
You do, and the pulse of the locker room seems to be that loss was kind of fluky, that it was a game in which everything went wrong for them that could possibly go. Ball bounced the wrong way. Charles Cross catches the strip sack. You know, how often does an offensive tackle catch a strip sack out of the air and then fall forward? Your centers all the way down the field catches a running back fumble when I believe it was Penny fumbled the ball.
Penny fumbled it, yeah.
You have 3 receptions that were fractions of from either being caught or feet being down for touchdowns. You had 2 running backs fumble on the goal at the 1 yard line. Last time that happened, it was Scabs playing in the replacement year in 1987. So just a confluence of things that just don't happen. And so it's nice to, as one player told us, it's nice to have some things that we know we can tighten up rather than looking around saying, okay, guys, what's the plan here?
Well, certainly. And if you're looking at some of the teams that did affect losses, and not that we're going to talk about them, but certainly there are teams this weekend that had losses where you don't know what the next step is to get back into playing competitive. The Broncos, on the other hand, were competitive throughout, statistically dominated time of possession, dominated yards, all those kinds of things. It was the turnovers for the Broncos, it was the penalties. And as you put it perfectly yesterday on the show, those are things that are correctable.
They are, and that's the thing. Everything that went wrong for Denver is something that is correctable, and that's a positive thing. I know it sounds like it's not a positive thing when all these things go wrong, but it's a positive thing in that you can correct them and get better. If you look at that game, I mean, it looked like early the first half, kind of looked like Seattle was whipping them a little. What happened? Seattle came out and punched them in the mouth because a lot of these starters hadn't played. And then once the starters got the calluses built over, all of a sudden things changed. Second half, Seattle gains 34 total yards. They don't even get past midfield, I believe you said. If you don't count the kneel downs, I think it was 37 yards.
37 yards, yeah.
Absolutely. The defense put the clamps on. The offense turned it on. The problem was there were still some penalties in that second half that set them back and a missed block. The second down play, the last second down play they got of the game, where they lost yardage on the screen, shot him in the foot. And that's what led to everything else that happened after that. You threw to Javonte on the next play, didn't get quite enough. It looked like, you hit the mark for McManus. You try the McManus thing, doesn't work. These are all things that stack on top of each other and make it that much more difficult for you. And these are things they can correct. A little bit different style of defense this week. Obviously, you had the 34 look and a cover 1, cover 3 defense last week. Now you got a cover 2, a Tampa 2 with a lot of 4-man underfronts coming at you this week. So it's going to be a little bit of a different challenge. You can run on this defense a lot easier than you ran on Seattle. Not going to be able to just throw as easy.
And that was going to be my next point, is those opportunities to run the ball. The Broncos were a little off of what we considered balanced attack, right? Only 20 rushing attempts to the 42, I believe, passing attempts. So I know some of the run game was supplemented by the screen game. So that's an understanding. But still, the Broncos, between Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, both were having success on the ground. You'd like to see them have build off that a little bit this week.
I think they will. I think they will run it right at the Houston Texans. You saw what Jonathan Taylor was able to do with the Indianapolis Colts last week, and they kind of got away from that a little bit at times when they shouldn't have. I think you're going to see a stronger rushing attack and more rushing attempts this week, and maybe a little bit less of, hey, let's let Russ cook in front of his old fans and his old team. A more conservative game plan against the Texans. Tampa do. The Texans are a good defense. Okay, I don't want anybody. This is not the Texans defense from 2 years ago. Texans are a good defense. The question is whether or not they can put up enough points on offense, really. And so I think that the Broncos have a good chance of winning this one. The odds makers certainly think they do.
Well, they do, and I think the home opener is going to also be a little bit of a factor in that too. But yeah, I mean, you're right. The Indianapolis Colts, by all intents and purposes, could really do whatever they wanted offensively. They got bogged down at times. They had their own mistakes, right? And they also had some turnovers. But 340 passing yards they gave up in that first game, 177 rushing yards. So the Broncos should have some opportunities. And again, the Broncos, at least for the offensive side, we'll get to the defense in a second, but from the offensive side of things, well, the Broncos did move the ball when they wanted to against Seattle. They really didn't struggle in that department. It was closing out drives. And as we talked to some players in the locker room already, that's been a focus this week in practice. Red zone, closing out at goal-to-go situations.
Yeah, and that's what it was. They moved the ball incredibly effectively. It was almost like Seattle was in bend, don't break, and which is not traditionally what they do. I mean, as a cover 3 defense, they kind of did, but they've switched. They're no longer a 4-man front. They're kind of running a 34. They want to attack more. And the Broncos were able to exploit that and take advantage. A lot of short stuff, screens to take advantage of the hyper aggression. And that was the thing. Everybody said, well, Russ only threw 5-yard passes most of the game. The deep ball was off. The deep ball was off. But the reason that they were throwing those types of passes, because that's where you attack that defense. Next, you're going to have to attack with the deep post. You're going to have to attack with the mid out, and you're going to have to attack with in between the safety and the corner along the sideline. That's where the Tampa 2 is soft in the pass game. And then, of course, running it up front. You get to get combo blocks on those tackles and run the ball up the middle. So I suspect we're going to see a little more of that this week.
Justin Simmons on the Broncos defensive side is dealing with a thigh injury coming off this game. And according to Coach Hackett, he's going to miss, quote unquote, some time. That's a big hit to this defense. And the Broncos, I feel like, are going to be pretty confident in what Caden Stearns can do out there, but it's certainly going to be a hit. Yeah,
it definitely is a hit. An emotional leader out there, a guy that teams have enough tape on that they stay away from. They'll probably try to exploit some areas they wouldn't exploit with Caden Stearns out there. We saw K-Jack on tape in the last game. People were throwing at him as well. So it's going to be, you're probably going to see them try to test the safeties a little bit. They got Brandon Cooks out there. They've got a vertical threat. So you will probably see the Houston Texans try to attack the deep secondary.
Yeah, and that's the thing is one, almost like we just had a conversation about Geno Smith, you really can't overlook Davis Mills either. They're a quarterback. And he showed some promise last year in this game. They certainly battled when it came to the matchup against the Indianapolis Colts in the first week. I happen to like Davis Mills, but I don't know this early in the season if he, along with that Houston Texans offense, are really going to be clicking on all cylinders. Not to mention the fact they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do with Dameon Pierce, who should be their quote-unquote bell cow back, but they were putting him in a bit of committee. I think they abandoned the run at times last week too. So Indianapolis, under Lovie Smith, I still think is figuring out what they want to be offensively.
They are. Pep Hamilton, first-year OC out there, used a lot of Rex Burkhead in that game. So it's going to be interesting to see if that split tilts back toward the more explosive Pierce rather than the more sure-handed Rex Burkhead in terms of the passing game. Davis Mills has it, above the shoulders, and man, that is a gigantic neck that sits above those shoulders. So, we'll see what he's able to do as a young guy coming into his own.
Definitely. And, but they're one of those teams that they did close out drives when they got in the red zone. They were 100%. So for what it is, they have some things they're working on. The Broncos, though, look like the team that if they can clean up a couple of things, they should be able to win this game, get a bounce back game. And then again, you turn to the 49ers after that, which is not going to be an easy game either.
Right. So, but you got back-to-back home games. You got a chance to kind of reset after going out there to Seattle. You're not going to have to deal with all that crowd noise, the false starts, those kinds of things. That should be a big plus. And if they can pare down those penalties, get more disciplined on defense, with the penalties, and on offense, same thing. They stand a good chance of winning this football game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, for Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Salute in Denver, and you got the world champions that live in your town.